time would you like it to be? And he tells you that. And that's transport consulting. It's a game of giving the answer to the client that they want to hear. So they'll hire you to do the next phase of the study. And it's sad to say, it happens in Britain, it happens all over the world, and the clients have to be very skeptical of the rubbish they're being told. Which client is telling me to build a railway across Africa? Unfortunately, I haven't found a client yet. I went to the Libyans and tried to persuade them to do it again a couple of weeks ago, and they said, oh, it's not our priority now. And I guess it isn't really. But you know, the guys in San Francisco in 1860, they were already rich guys. They owned hardware stores and things like that. But they said, we can go to Washington and persuade President Lincoln to give us a contract, a concession to build a railway, which got government subsidy, but they had to take a lot of risk too. They had to fund it themselves, the construction and so on, and they got fantastically rich in the end of it. And the country got fantastically rich. But they, you know, Lincoln did it right, actually.
So he listened to what other people were advising him rather than getting consultants.
By and large, presidents of the U.S. are good at using judgment to who they listen to. There have been one or two that have done things recently, invading countries where, you know, one set of advisors said, should be a piece of cake, don't worry, and, you know, but yeah, he listened, and they had a vision for the country, and they knew what railways did already. They had a big railway building industry in the east. There were no railways west of the Mississippi. They had no idea actually how they were going to cross the mountains. They had no idea how to dig tunnels through the mountains. When they started building the Canadian Pacific Railway, they hadn't even figured out what paths they were going to go through. They started building, going west from Winnipeg, pointing at the mountains, and they sent some guy out with a mule train to try to find a route through the mountains. He said, there must be a pass through it. Just come back and tell us which the best one is. They paid him, I think it was $20,000, and they named the pass after him. That was in his contract, actually. And it's called the Rogers Pass. When you go to Banff, you see the Rogers Pass. Okay, Lagos. I first heard about this project 5 years ago. I got an email from a Canadian friend who's a great freight railway consultant. His firm knows less about passenger railways. There's no press here, right? No. Chatham House Rules? I said, what does Peter Kieran know about metros? You know, he lives in Ottawa. He's been on the subway in Toronto a few times. And he does freight railway concessions in Africa. But anyway, he said, we're having the Lagos Mass Transit Roadshow. And it's going to Abuja, or Lagos, Dubai, and London. And I said, well, I live in London, so I put it in my diary. And I wandered down to, because I wasn't busy that day, to say hi to Peter. So we did a study in a project in India about 15 years ago. And he said, yeah, we're going to award a concession for these two lines, the red line and the blue line. And I met another guy there who was a Nigerian entrepreneur, merchant banker, Bureau of Capital. And he said, we're putting a consortium together, or I've got a backer. I met a lot of other guys who said sort of the same thing, but less credibly. Said, and we're going to get the contract to do this. And a lot of the people clearly were just talking hot air, didn't really know what they were doing, but this guy seemed to know what he was talking about, and he did. He said, we want the red line. That's the one that's going to have all the traffic. And I looked at the schemes, and I said, I don't think the red line people have figured out how to build it, because the corridor's got existing tracks along it. It's NRC, and I expect the federal government and the Lagos state government get along like a house on fire. I mean, they don't cooperate at all, probably. Sure. And sorry?
It's true.
In fact, it's not that different with freight railways in the U.S. And quite often, freight railways in the U.S. plan is, oh, we can go along there to build our metro line. And the Burlington Northern at Santa Fe says, over my dead body. I mean, we carry freight on that railway. We're not going to let you put your metro tracks down there and mess up our freight railway.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What's the difference between this blue line, red line, blue line?
The color beside the color? Well, the blue line goes east-west along the Badagry Expressway corridor, and the red line goes north-south along the Nigerian Railways line. And the Badagry corridor, well, it's a federal highway, but the federal government didn't seem to take a lot of interest in it, and Fashola had said he was going to rebuild it as an expressway and put room down the middle for train tracks.